Hey, everybody. I'm joined by Greg. Say hello, Greg, please.
Hey folks, hey Matt, good to be on here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. So, Greg, we've never actually chatted one-on-one, and this is going to be a lot of fun. So, what I want to do is, Greg, for the last 3 years, has kind of done a year in summary for the Star Wars CCG market. So, sort of looking at what happened in the past year. I know we just did our Q4 update kind of for the Star Wars CCG market, but I think this is kind of a little bit of a deeper dive into a kind of yearly trend, annual trend, volume of sales, and kind of analyzing those a little bit. So that's kind of what we're going to do over the next 20-ish minutes. We'll see how long this is, 20-ish minutes, but I think it'd be
Good
kind
to
of
have
fun.
goals to shoot for.
Yeah, right. So we're going to kind of look trends that we see from 2019, 2020, 2021, et cetera, and sort of what this means. And so let's kind of get into it. So let's hop into the data. Any kind of thoughts before we do, Greg?
No, I mean, yeah, I think you covered it. Yeah, I've been, enjoying tracking all this data, and I enjoy, playing around with it as well. So like these assessments that I do are as much for me as everyone else, but like I enjoy sharing them with the community and letting folks know like, where we're at, where we've come from. I think it's fun to look at.
Yeah, and I think one of the fundamental things about this as well is this is about price transparency, right? So a lot of this is, if you're a new person coming in and you're like, how much should I spend on a set of Premiere? Is this overpriced? Is this underpriced? The layman, the yeoman's work that Greg is doing helps people navigate this stuff. And, we're going to look at more macro stuff, but within the spreadsheets that we'll share in the description, you can kind of look at more nuanced set by set information to kind of get that information. So it can be hard to figure out. This is an out of print game, so everything is totally speculative. And I see once a week, how much is my stuff worth? So hopefully this can help answer that question.
Yes. Assuming you've got complete sets.
Yes, little asterisks there.
Yeah, I can't help you otherwise. So yeah, this first one, for those who have watched our other videos with Cam and Mark. Hey guys, this is the last thing I showed last time. This is this is showing this is sort of a look at 2022. These are the sum of the average prices of individual sets sales on eBay. So these are complete set sales on eBay. The top, you'll see sort of the progression of this average over 2022. And this is, I should say, if you look at the top, this is all the non-foil black border sets. No AI, and includes Ref 1 foil. The reason I have those sets here is that these are just the sets that have the highest sales frequencies, and so they give me the best data. And so I thought they captured sort of.
So we're looking at Premiere through Feed, but not Reflections 2 premiums and Reflections 3 premiums, right?
Including Reflections 2 and Reflections 3 premiums. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're looking at, I guess, at 12 sets plus those two. So it's 15 total products, right?
Let's say that's correct.
Okay. I think I get the math there. Okay.
And so, if you look 2022, started out pretty high, and then there's been this decrease in Q3 and Q4. What looks like a pretty significant decrease in Q4 as a percentage, right? It's actually not as significant as it might seem. And I will say in Q3, some of the sets that dragged down that Q4 price weren't really selling at all. So I think we might have actually had a smoother decline if I had a bit more data in Q3. If you see the sales frequency, which is the one below that, it's all over the place, up and down. Maybe a steady, if I normalized it, a bit of a downward trend with an increase in the last month or two.
So the two things I see on the total sets sold, right? So I see one, that the floor never dropped out in this. There wasn't like a period where it was 3 sets sold, right? There was always at least like, 20 to 60 is sort of your range, your min max here. So like you had pretty robust and consistent sales happening, which I think shows like a healthy marketplace. But I would also just say that I'm pretty sure you could put sort of like the S&P 500 on here, and it would look very similar, right? To like what happened, right? Like something happened in March that caused a bunch of chaos in global markets. And then there was like a little bit of an increase over the summer. Then like something else happened, like October, elections or whatever. and then like we're kind of coming out of this, whether we are or not, but it's interesting to sort of like overlay, you know, with the NASDAQ.
That would be really interesting. I wish you had asked me to do that and beforehand.
I just thought of it. I was like, huh, this looks kind of familiar.
Yeah, and I haven't done the January data yet, but I will say, just glancing at eBay, I think sales frequencies have been pretty robust in January. So I don't know if they're about the same or continuing to increase, but you know, that we'll check in on the Q1 video with Cam and Mark on that.
Cool. So what do we got up next?
Yeah, so up next, this I made this. This is a chart of total sales volume of all sets. You know, so this is just all the sets that I track, the total number of them sold in each quarter over the last 2 years. And I just kind of put this together on a whim, or maybe to sort of look at how 2022 is doing compared to 2021. And I was like really surprised by the fact that 2021 actually had a steady decrease of sales throughout the whole year. And this is when, you know, prices were booming. And so interestingly, while the numbers in 2021 in terms of sales frequencies were going down, the prices were skyrocketing. 2022 has continued that downward trend in sales frequency. Unfortunately, it's also had a downward trend in sales price as well.
Yeah, I think the two observations I have here is, one, so you're only tracking eBay sales, and I do think that the market has grown and there's a lot more sort of online platforms that stock Star Wars CCG. I'm looking mostly at Category 1 games and also Brian Fred's store, which I guess is StarWarsCCGcards.com. So you have two rather robust marketplaces that have emerged basically since late 2021, you know, sort of in that Q4 into 2022. So I think that's one thing. And then also, I think that there's just, during COVID, there was a bunch of new collectors like myself. I was part of this trend of people that were buying sets in, you know, Q1 of 2021 and Q2 of 2022. And then there's just been people that have kind of been getting the stuff that they want, right? And then they've kind of graduated from Collecting Academy and maybe there's less people selling, and, you know, maybe we'll see an uptick in volume if things, you know, get a little more sour with the economy, and maybe the first thing to go is, you know, your Star Wars card collection and not necessarily your car or something. But it'll be curious to see, you know, what happens in the next, you know, 12 months. I actually am still pretty bullish on everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think the points you make are you know, good and likely correct. Although, you know, it's hard to know exactly. But yeah,
I'm speculating.
You know, yeah, these other marketplaces have popped up. And so, you know, they're drawing sales away from eBay, right? There was a lot of, you know, I was doing the same thing, selling a lot, buying and selling. And I think also this was still the time where a lot of people were like finding, you know, these collections in their garages, right? And putting these sets up for sale. And, you know, there's only so much garage space to sort through until you like run out of like new stuff to find and put up on eBay. Yeah, so that's right.
Yeah, kind of final thought on that. I also think there's an entire, you know, generation of collectors that are coming in and maybe more interested in grading or more interested in getting certain mains or ultra rares and don't really care about the sets, right? Like they're coming into the hobby because Darth Vader is a cool character. They never played the game. They don't care about having a premier white border set. It doesn't matter to them, but they want the Darth Vader card. So maybe that's also something that's happening.
No, it's fair to, you know, to what degree are like set sales a sort of indicator of the overall market? And, you know, obviously there's a relationship there, but there could be like very thriving submarkets, even if individual, you know, set sales are going down.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. So here's the next one. This is sort of this one and the next one are the two ones that I really love doing, because this is what I call like the mini master set. This is tracking the total sum of all of the black border sets. So no white border sets, no AI, no foils. I have this and a full master set. I do this one only because, you know, there's a lot of collectors out there that aren't interested in the AIs, not interested in the foils, not interested in the white border sets, but there's a kind of, they want one of every set, you know, in the way they're thinking about sets. So you see in 2019, this, to pick up all of these sets, so from Premiere through Endor and Death Star 2 and then the Episode 1 sets, it would run you about $2,000. In 2022, that average was $4,400. So over a little over 100% increase. And then if you look, I have also the last 3 months of 2022, the last quarter. The end of 22 would have cost you a little under 4,000, which is still a good 100% increase over where it was in 2019.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, I think you sort of see that like 3-month average. So that's the most recent 3 months, correct? Like
yes, the last data I took was at the beginning of January. So we're looking at, October, November, December of 2022.
It's interesting that I always thought there was a bit of like a holiday spike that happens with like everything sales, right? But I guess maybe with collectibles, your wife isn't buying you them for Christmas because it's a little too obscure, right? It's just more so maybe your funds are diverted to buying stuff for others rather than, sort of treating yourself. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's my sense too, is that kind of thing is occurring, that like a lot of people are spending their Christmas money not on Star Wars cards for their family, and so their personal purchasing is going down, and then it might kick back in January, February.
Yeah, they're like, we need more stuff rather than small cardboard cards with pictures of like Mark Hamill on it, right? There's more desperate things in our lives.
It's a great stocking stuffer.
That's right, absolutely.
And then for folks interested in sort of the real big picture, which is the full master set, right? Every black border set, every white border set, all the foil sets, including all the AI, this would have cost you about $5,000 in 2019. And again, when I say $5,000, that's picking them up as individual sets on eBay. And you can see this very nice steady increase into 2022, where we're looking at a good 200% of where it was in 2019. And so, obviously that's a much more significant increase than just the main black border sets. And a lot of that is just that the foil sets and the white border sets to some degree skyrocketed, but the foil sets really, really skyrocketed. I mean, those sets went up, sometimes 300, 400%, in price from their, pre-pandemic prices. They were not selling very much at all. There was not a lot of interest in them pre-pandemic. Those sets all skyrocketed. And so you see a huge increase in the full master set price compared to 2019 when I started this.
I'm curious with this, so you see a bit of a not necessarily retracing, but maybe a bit of a pullback with the 3-month average. And, it's not super drastic. You're looking at what, like 5% or something there, $500, less than 5%. But I am kind of wondering if you're going to start to run into like a law of large numbers problem with Star Wars CCGs. As soon as stuff stops being $20 a card and it's $2,000 a card, you just start running into issues where you start looking like you're like money laundering, right? Like it's truly like your activities are just like scrutinized in a different way, right? Like this like high-end Magic runs into this a lot, where it's like, why are you transferring someone $25,000? Like what are you doing? Like
yeah, good. I mean, this doesn't even include the Japanese sets.
Right, like you just start to run into these like fundamental like financial institution problems. Like, yes, can you absolutely send $20,000? Sure, but is your bank gonna maybe start to wonder what's going on if you're doing it all the time?
Yeah, I don't know when's the last time someone has just purchased a complete master set. I think that maybe there was one on eBay a year ago or so, but there hasn't been one. There actually is one up right now, I think. But it might be missing the tournament foils, but they have it up for like 20K. I'm very doubtful it'll sell anywhere near that. But speaking of tournament foils, one thing to note about this chart, there should be an asterisk here, which is that there have been no complete tournament foil set sales in the last 3 months, maybe even in the last 6 months. So I had to guesstimate a bit about what to do with that number. Now, there have been some sales of like the ICSD and the Corvette recently. And they've sold for quite a bit, but also the numbers are a bit all over the place. So, I know someone sold a pair with the ICSD and the Corvette for like $3,000 recently, but there was also a sale for $2,000 recently. it was really tricky for me to come up with a price for the full set, and I don't like doing that without hard data. I came up with 2,700. I think that's probably a little low, but it's the number I chose to work with in this data. So that's just something to flag. For those that think that a complete set of tournament foils is worth more than 2,700, you might want to raise that 3-month average. And then in which case there's actually maybe very little, if no drop from, Q4 to Q3. Though I should say that huge increase in the price of the ICSD and Corvette recently is really what's driving that 3-month average being so close to the full 2022 average, because there's been a pretty, maybe not a significant drop, but there's been a, those numbers increased about $1,000, right? So that $2,700 figure I put on the tournament foil set is about $1,000 increase from 2021, in terms of like data that I was able to track. So that $1,000 increase made up for, a roughly $1,000 decrease, in some of these, other sets. And so I think that's one reason that 3-month average looks so good compared to that 22 average, and better than, I lost, less of a drop than you see here in this other chart. So just like a couple asterisks about this data here at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of clear, like the Curling Corvette foil and the Imperial Class Star Destroyer foil are just like, they've become the chase cards, like the chase cards that everybody is after right now. And I think it's actually healthy, right? Like, games need chase cards. They need things that people can look at and say, like, I really want that, because that helps just, I think, keep people engaged, especially out of print games. Like, how do you keep people interested 20 years later? Like, you kind of need something like the White Whale. You need something to sort of talk about, or, garner excitement or interest or something.
Yeah, I think for most of the pandemic, like the ultra rare foils were playing that role, especially the Darth Maul Young Apprentice foil. That was like the big one, but all of them generally. And I think you're right. The Imperial Class Star Destroyer and the Corvette have really recently become, I mean, the increase in their prices just in the last 6 months is sort of gigantic compared to, where they were for much of the pandemic.
Yep. All right. What do we got next here? I think we have some.
Yeah. So this is just tracking. This is sort of maybe going back step. This is tracking. This is comparing the Q4 prices in 2022 to the 2022 average, and then looking at it as a sort of percentage increase or drop. What you see here, interestingly, is a percentage decrease across the board, except for, unsurprisingly, the tourney foil set, which has had a pretty large increase, and maybe, again, flag, maybe even larger if you think I've undervalued it. And interestingly, Premier is just like, just, what a strong set. That set just never decreases, apparently. The only set to continue to increase other than the tourney foil set. And then the rest of them, you see this decrease of anywhere from a few percentage to, upwards of, a little over 20%. Although, interestingly, I should say, the sets that have had the largest decreases in Q4 compared to the 2022 average, so we're looking at Ref 3 Premium, Coruscant Theed, also Jabba's Palace, for whatever reason. I don't understand why.
Well, it went from like $80 to $72.
Yeah, exactly. It's worth so little that that percentage can swing. But the Coruscant Theed and Ref 3, which have seen the biggest decreases recently compared to the 22 average, have also, in that 2022 average, saw the largest increase from the 2021 averages. So meaning, Coruscant Theed and Ref 3 were the sets in 2022 that had the largest increase compared to their 2021 average sale prices. And then in Q3 have had the biggest decrease. And I think one explanation for this is just that they were overpriced. They just had too large of an increase compared to the rest of the sets. And now things are normalizing a little bit. And so you see a larger decrease in their sale price recently, but they might be getting more in line with the sort of general overall increase over the last couple of years that the other sets have had.
Yeah, no, I think that's a kind of a good read on the situation. I do just think with both Coruscant and Theed, you're almost better off selling the singles, right? Like with Coruscant, there's at least 3 cards I can think of off the top of my head that go for $70 plus, or let's say $50 plus to be generous, right? Like We Must Accelerate Our Plans, the All Wings combo card, the Short Range Fighters combo. Like, these are just random cards that are $50 plus, and there's a good handful of those in in Coruscant. So
Yeah.
You know,
That and the mains, sell
yeah,
for quite a bit. Yeah.
yeah. The each of the mains, this is at least $25. That the Queen
And
Amidala non AI, the Darth Maul, etc.
And I should say this is, I don't have the data. I don't track the sales data on those singles, but I do sort of keep abreast roughly of these kinds of things. And I don't think those mains or those high value singles have seen anywhere near a decrease that we see in the overall set price. So like they're still, they're outperforming that set decrease.
Yeah, so maybe it's a little lesson to folks that are sitting with like a 3 cards away from a master from a set of Coruscant, and you want to sell it. Maybe just sell it as singles rather than trying to get those last 3 cards. Maybe that's the more economical route. But anyways, just a thought there. Anyways, what are we at next? I think we're DS2 ultra rares.
Yeah. So not much left here. I have like some of these other things that I find interesting in tracking. So here's your DS2 ultra rares, your Luke and your Emperor. Have seen. Again, this is sort of, this bar graph should sort of remind you of maybe the master set bar graph. They just seen this kind of steady increase over the last couple of years. When I started this, they were, selling for, a little over $100. The Luke was maybe 120, 125. The Emperor was $10 or $15 less than that. Now they're both, a decent bit over $200, and these, there's so much data on these, just continue to sell in such high frequencies. And there's been a bit of a drop recently, but again, still not significant with respect to thinking about them each both selling for over $200 on, very
I mean, I really do just think of the Emperor and Luke non-foils as the ultra rares as sort of bonds. Ever since I came back to collecting, they've been $200. They've just been $200. It's a great way to like store value. Like you can find, if you can find one for under $200, it's probably a good deal. If you sell it for over 200, then you probably got a good price. It's just sort of been like right around that 200 to 225 range.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, those singles sell in, not only is it strongly that, but those singles sell. I get far more data on those singles than I do on complete sets and any other of the singles I track. It's just a massive amount of data. They just constantly sell, and it's with no sign of stopping.
The funny thing is to think about just the like number of, not like just rares from Death Star 2. They're just sitting in binders somewhere, like the Talo 2, right? Or the Colonel Kraken or something, where it's
Yeah.
it's just hundreds of them just sitting.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you do regularly see on eBay, these sales for, a Death Star 2 complete set minus ultra rares.
Yeah.
And that goes pretty regularly and for a good price. But nowhere near in the frequency of the individual ultra rares.
All right, what do we got next?
So this is average prices of complete sets of the Coruscant and Theed AI. So just the AIs, the 9 AIs from each set. I started tracking these a bit late compared to, so if you remember, the master sets I started tracking in 2019. I didn't start tracking the AIs until 2021. And so, you don't see the huge increase that you saw in some of the other things. But you see that a Coruscant complete set of AIs will run you around, 1,300, recently more. And a complete set of the Theed AIs will run you around 700. Recently, the 2022 average was 800. Interestingly, I mentioned this actually in our last video. I don't understand why these pull apart, why the Coruscant AIs continue to increase while we've seen a decrease in the Theed AIs. To some degree, I understand why the Theed AIs are not worth as much as a set. They printed more of them, right? Or they were easier to get. Is that what it is? I hope I don't.
I think it was 1 of 3 instead of
1 in 3 versus 1 in 4, right? So like compared to their non-AI counterparts in the set, they were on the sheets more frequently. But yeah, why that one we've seen a slight downtick as opposed to seeing an uptick, I don't have any great insight about, other than the fact that I'm working with kind of small sample sizes on the AIs, and could be that that normalizes once I get more data, or for whatever reason people just like those Coruscant AIs more. I will say that the Coruscant AI increases is largely driven by the Queen Amidala, Ruler of Naboo, and the Darth Maul Young Apprentice. So those two are like the big ones from the Coruscant set, and it could be that they've driven an increase where we don't see a sort of equivalent increase in feed. But yeah, I don't have a great insight here, but here's the data.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that roughly speaking, that the Coruscant AIs are just more iconic, let's say on average, than the feed AI. Like you get some sort of like crappy ones like the like Maul's ship or something. But generally speaking,
there is so little love for the Infiltrator AI. It sells that. I think that's the lowest valued AI.
It's just a crappy picture, right? And like I think the Yoda one is underrated. I'm a big fan of the Yoda one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Yoda one is a great. I like that one too. I mean, I do like the feed ones have nice ones too. The R2 is cool. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's not that cool. Maybe
I don't know. I just like, who asked, like, Jar Jar is the most reviled character, right? In the I mean, I like Jar Jar, but I just feel like there's not like people lining up to get AIs for Jar Jar and Boss Nass.
Well, the Boss Nass one is I think, a cool image, and it does outperform the other ones in feed by surprisingly, and so it could be just the image. I know I have this very.
I think it's the Nemoidians. The Nemoidians must really not be pulling their weight, right? Like Rune, Hako, and Newt Gunray.
That's right. Anyway, yeah, that's the last one I have here to show. I think that really kind of sums everything up here. We could, yeah.
Well, this is actually good timing because I think your video is cutting out here, so we're losing quality. But kind of final thoughts, Greg. Thanks for doing this. It's fun to kind of go through some of these charts and sort of make our own personal observations. Obviously, this is not financial advice.
Yeah,
I do think
all of my data is backwards looking. Right. That's all I can, that's all I can say.
I think that this is a really exciting and kind of small market to be in that's filled with some great people. And also, this is just fundamentally a fun game to play and collect. Like that's the cool thing. And so I'm really happy that I kind of do stuff like this with you, Greg, and find fun people to collaborate with.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out to do this. I like, like you mentioned at the beginning, the last couple of years, I've made these posts on Facebook. It's a lot of text to read through. So I was really happy to be able to sort of give this, present this to the community in a more graphically pleasing way, and, get to hear beautiful voices at the same time. I should say what I'll do, I haven't done this yet, but if you link to my spreadsheet, after this, I will embed all of these on a new page in that sheet, like in a separate sheet in the overall spreadsheet, so folks can look at all these, on their own time and zoom in all they want.
Please leave your thoughts in the comments. We welcome everything positive and negative. I'm still looking for a troll. So if anyone wants to fill that role, you can do the troll. But everybody, thanks for tuning in. And
you've made it, Matt, when you've got the trolls.
I know. I'm not there. I'm far from there. You got someone who just hates Decipher products from 1995 to 2007 or whatever, right? Anyways, we got a lot more in store, so please like and subscribe and stay tuned. Lots more content coming in the future. So we'll see everybody next time.